Something about this isn't right. This is Mattel's Power Devour Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's supposed to look like Ember from the Jurassic World Rebirth movie. But it doesn't. Does it? Welcome back, time travelers, to another episode of Prehistoric Fix, where I take existing figures and repaint them in a more realistic way, in hopes that responsible adults can remember who they were before time. I thought I knew what Ember looked like, but one of you left a comment on my Spinosaurus video. At the time, I thought it was a bit of an exaggeration, but it turns out it was a warning, because the more reference photos I collected, the more confusing Ember became. Every image did look different, and before I knew it, I stopped painting what felt right and started painting what I thought the references wanted me to paint. The paint job was technically fine, but every time I looked at it, something just felt off. So welcome back again, time travelers, to the drawing board. This time, I wasn't going to paint what the references told me to paint. I was going to paint what Ember felt like to me at the theaters. And to me, Ember was never brown. Ember was blue and gold. One thing I noticed while studying Ember was that no matter which version I was looking at, there was always a sense of warmth underneath everything else. So to get there, I started with a golden yellow base coat, followed by a layer of neutral gray in sun-exposed areas. Then came the blue-gray stripes. But this would be no walk in the park, Jurassic Park. First pass was really just a starting point, and several rounds of fine-tuning would eventually be needed before the pattern finally reached something I was happy with. Faces are where we naturally tend to look first, so I added a few darker markings around the head to help emphasize some of Ember's facial features and give the face a little more character. Can't forget the little areas between the joints. And unlike Mattel, I don't forget to paint the tail. At this point, I decided to take a few creative liberties. By connecting some of the stripes along the upper back, I was able to create a stronger, more cohesive pattern while still preserving the overall feel of the design. I'm aware that some of the Jurassic World purists might disagree, but after careful consideration, I've decided not to endorse their stripes. At this stage, the stripes were drawing a little too much attention to themselves. A subtle layer of brown modeling on top helped settle them back into the skin and made the pattern feel a little more natural. But solving one problem created another. The modeling helped blend the stripes into the skin, but it also dulled some of the blue and gold contrasts that made me want to redo Ember in the first place. So I had to go back and selectively reinforce a few areas with darker blue-gray tones to bring some of that visual impact back. Painting is rarely a straight line. It's a game of push and pull, constantly balancing contrast against subtlety, until eventually the right answer begins to emerge. With the main striping pattern finally dialed in, it was time to tackle one of Ember's signature markings, the bold stripes crossing the Antorbital Fenestra. I liked the direction that this was going, but the base coat looked too unidimensional. This next step is incredibly subtle, and I may not even be able to convince you that anything is changing here, but bear with me I'm slowly introducing an olive modeling pattern to add much needed variation in pigmentation. To push the effect a little further, I made a second pass with a soft pastel green. Yeah, I think that was worth redoing. Ember's design doesn't really have a gentle fade into the underbelly. The border is actually quite well defined, so reintroducing the white also meant bringing back that sharp separation line. And of course, all dinosaurs make sure to visit their local dentists at least every 6 months, Ember included. But despite any paleodentists painstakingly removing tartar on a regular basis, with a diet like Ember's, which may have included the occasional bit of rotten flesh, and no, I'm not getting dragged into the predator versus scavenger debate. Maintaining a pristine mouth would have been nearly impossible. So a dark brown wash along the tongue and oral mucosa helps add a subtle touch of realism. You know what isn't painstaking? Taking your mouse cursor and clicking on the subscribe button below. Conversely, a light white wash around some of the more prominent scales helps accentuate the spaces between them, creating the impression of dust accumulation and weathered, keratinized skin. This is actually one of my more recent technique discoveries, and has quickly become one of my favorites. More often than not, it helps tie the entire paint scheme together. By subtly desaturating the underlying colors, it tones down some of the artificial vibrancy and nudges everything a little closer toward realism. I typically concentrate the effect on the face, the feet, and anywhere the sculpt suggests larger, more prominent scales. These are the areas where dust and wear would naturally be most noticeable, making them ideal places to push a little extra texture and realism. It is, however, important to bring back some of that vibrancy, and we do that through dry brushing. Slowly reintroducing color to the raised surfaces allows the richness of the original palette to return, but now with all the added texture and highlights created along the way. Once again, it's that constant push and pull that seems to define so much of painting. By this point, Ember was beginning to feel less like a repaint and more like a character. And wherever there's character, there's personality. And what better way to show personality than through scars? Evidence of past struggles, close calls, and battles whose stories we'll never know. The gash along Ember's upper lip may only be a minor detail, but it hints at a history all of its own. And finally, the eyes. The moment it notices you, the moment it begins to think, the moment it wakes beside a river and quietly observes a young family drifting past on an inflatable raft. For a brief moment, it isn't a monster, it's simply an animal, curious about the world around it. But this being Jurassic World, then later there's running and screaming. separated by millions of years, they were never meant to cross paths. One commanded the rivers, the other ruled the land. Two apex predators, and one lingering question. Years ago, a tyrant king fell to the jaws of a sailback giant. A moment etched into Jurassic history. But legends have a way of returning, and when they do, old stories aren't always retold. Sometimes they're rewritten.